Thaine Shetter.
Welcome, my friends, to the show that must somehow end. Now, if you're like me, you wish the circus and Princeton Toastmasters meetings would never, ever end. But people do have lives. They have babysitters. They have work the next day. That means our meeting must come to an end. And as General Evaluator, it's your job to steer that last part of the meeting to a successful close and get it done by about 9:15. So, you have been tapped.
Today's shorter for that. Sorry.
Normally 9:15. You've been tapped to be General Evaluator. You've never done it before. What do you need to know? Much like a three-ring circus, there are three main parts. Before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. Now, many of the members never see what happens before the meeting. Well, what does happen before the meeting? As General Evaluator, you have a very important role. You need to confirm your evaluation team. That includes an evaluator for every prepared speech, an odd counter, a grammarian, and a timer. And also at this point, make sure that you know how to pronounce everybody's name. And if you're having huge problems, just use their first name. Their first and last name is on the agenda. And whatever you do, just say with confidence, and only you and the person will know if you're wrong. You've confirmed your evaluation team. The biggest thing you need to do is to pair the speakers and the evaluators in advance. We like to have the speakers and evaluators talk to each other before the meeting so they know what's going on. They can share anything that they'd like to share before the meeting. Now, how do you go about that? Who goes with who? Well, you look at the relative experience levels of each of the speakers and the experience levels of each of the evaluators. Now, especially for our newer speakers, we want to be very supportive. So sometimes it's best to pair a fairly experienced evaluator with the newer speakers. Again, that's all going to depend on who is speaking and evaluating that night. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you don't have to do this by yourself. Talk to the Toastmaster, talk to other members. It's a collaborative effort. So you've paired your speakers and evaluators. You still have the odd counter, the grammarian, and the timer. If people filling these roles are also relatively new, you might have somebody just to help them along during the meeting, somebody who knows what's going on. This is especially true with the timer. Timing can be confusing if you've never done it before. Sometimes when we've had a brand new timer, we've had a more experienced member sit with him or her just to be there as a resource. Those are the big things you're doing before the meeting. Pretty straightforward. Confirm, pair, and get back up as needed. The night of the meeting, just like tonight, get to the meeting a little bit early so you can coordinate with everybody. You need to keep your eyes open to see who is and isn't there. There might be times that somebody doesn't show up at the last minute for some reason. Just have somebody ready to step in. At the point that we reach the evaluation section, it's been a long evening. So this isn't a part of the meeting to really drag out. And you're not here to show off. You're here to show off your team. So just keep it very basic. First of all, introduce each evaluator for each speaker. Now, if for some reason you decided to have introductions, I suggest you coordinate with the Toastmaster so everything follows a common theme. But again, just keep it easy. You can say our first evaluator is Stephanie, who will be evaluating the speech given by Angie. And then get out of the way, because it's Stephanie's turn on the stage. And one thing to keep in mind at this point, if you're a general evaluator, it helps to sit on the front row. Don't go way to the back so you have to run back up front and back and forth every time. Just be there so you can hop right up and down. So you've introduced your evaluators for each speaker. You call on the awe counter, the grammarian, and the awe timer to give their reports. And then it is your moment in the sun. As general evaluator, you comment on aspects of the meeting that you thought went particularly well that should be continued in the future, and also things that we could do differently to make future meetings even stronger, more streamlined, even more productive. Now, what those comments will be depends so much on the meeting that night. But some of the things you could look out for include, well, was the room set up on time? Were guests greeted? Did everybody have agendas, ballots? Other things. Now, one thing you'll find at Princeton, we do so many things so well that there might not be a lot to comment on. One thing we do well at Princeton, everybody on the agenda knows they're going to be on the stage. As their time comes up, they should start working their way to the front of the room. I've been at other meetings elsewhere, a person is called on, and 2 or 3 minutes later, they finally make their way up to the front of the room. And I'm not exaggerating, 2 or 3 minutes. All these are little aspects. It's going to depend so much on the meeting and what is going on that night as to what you comment on. One thing I'd like to add, as general evaluator, it's not really your job to rehash the speeches again. Each speech has already gotten an evaluation. Comment on the aspects of the meeting itself that you thought went well or needed some improvement. You may read in your manual sometimes that as general evaluator you could comment on some aspect of an evaluation that seemed to be overlooked. I wouldn't encourage that because the evaluator has picked what he or she is going to say. You know, let's say we have a horrible speaker, which never happens at Princeton, but there are 18 things that they could improve on. Their evaluator chose to focus on the 2 primary things they need to work on for the next speech. So as general evaluator, I don't need to hop in with another observation about things. Leave the speech evaluation to the speech evaluators. At this point, ideally, it's 9:15 or earlier tonight. You brought the meeting home on time, so it gives us time to wrap up the meeting, hear from our guests, and so forth. Now, I did say there's a third part, the part after the meeting. This does and doesn't happen sometimes. If you'd really like to be remembered as a general evaluator, maybe send a congratulatory email to each of your evaluation team members saying, I really appreciated how you did this particularly well. This might be a place saying, you know, next time you do this role, consider doing this just to keep things moving along. But if you embrace all of these aspects, when you're serving as general evaluator, you can make it from a show that never ends to the show that does end on time.
Whoa.